Hello and welcome to the latest Functional Skills Reforms Update webinar. As you can see, I'm flying solo today. It's Paul Sini. Flying solo for some good and actually quite exciting reasons. Firstly, we've let Catherine have a holiday this week, and I've spent the day in Burntwood with Amanda running the first of our launch events. I just sort of dipped out at the end of it. It's coming towards the end of the session, and it's been a good session so far. Well received, packed house, and a good day so far. So, turning our attention to what we're talking about this month, I'll switch my webinar camera off so you can see. Really, the focus for this month was really looking at delivery, administration, and exam conduct, which sound quite dry subjects, but there is actually quite a lot of things to kind of run through and quite a lot to sort of talk you through. So it will be a little bit of me rattling through things this afternoon, but the usual drill applies. If you've got any questions, by all means, post them as we go. Depending on time, I may kind of do a quick kind of trawl through there to see if there's anything I can quickly kind of cover off during that. Otherwise, we'll add that to the ever-growing list of other questions that are informing the other stuff that we're doing. So if you're new and this is your first time, I know we keep getting more people signing up each month, so it is good to kind of keep reminding ourselves of that. It's something we say every single month. Is that we have a lot more information about all of the reforms on the Functional Skills Updates page. You can see the link to it on this slide. As always, we'll send you out the deck of slides afterwards, so you'll be able to refer back to this. And again, some more documents just to sort of remind you about the readiness checklist and our subject content mapping guides. Talked a little bit through those during the events we run today, so again, useful thing to have. And my usual plea about, if you haven't already signed up to get email alerts from us, you can by all means do so. In terms of what's news this month, we still have in the background the off-qual technical evaluation process happening, coming towards its conclusion, and very much an iterative process, so it is getting close to being kind of finalised. Some very positive conversations going on with the colleagues with the regulator, and I think we should be able to sort of make a final announcement very soon on that. One really big announcement today, and I'll say a little bit more about it in a moment, as well as kind of giving a few kind of quick sort of whoops about that, is the launch of our new openness platform, which I've been talking about for I don't know how long. But anyway, it's finally here as of today, so it's coming. I'll talk a little bit more about it in a second. And then finally, another sort of piece of news or a piece of information to kind of share and update you on is the continuing series of events. We've got a whole series of them coming. Obviously, that link there will take you straight through to the booking page, and we've just in the last few days added a few more dates. Another thing just to be aware of is that we're continuing to add more sample assessments to the web page as well, alongside other documents, and there are a number of other documents that are coming imminently, which I'll talk about in a second. Which leads me on to the big announcement today, which is the launch of openness. You can see at the bottom of this slide there's a link through to a web page that takes you through a lot more of the information. We're running a number of separate walkthrough videos, which we're going to be releasing in the next few days, that will really give you a kind of work through of how this thing works, really from start to finish. So you've got a really good guide to it. But here in a nutshell is what it is. It is effectively our sort of parallel version of the Secure Assess, the Evolve system that we use for live tests. We're going to be using it as of today to host sample on-screen functional skills external assessments. It's not replacing the ones that will be on the website, but will be in addition to those. The crucial difference between the tests hosted on this system and the tests that will sit on our website is that they will record every attempt. And they will store learners' responses. So crucially, what that allows you as a tutor, as a teacher, to do is log in afterwards and mark those and look at those responses and go back to through them, provide feedback to your learners, and hopefully use that to judge their readiness for a live assessment. We've just so far built them for the current 3748, the current legacy functional skills assessments. We're holding back just for the time being on putting the new assessments, partly because they're still obviously in the process of being finalised at the moment, but also because I think we wanted to obviously be clear about what's live and what's current and what isn't. So they will be coming, and obviously when the new qualifications go live in September, they will certainly be there at that point. Just to say that we are, as I said a second ago, we are adding some more dates to the to our launch event calendar of events, particularly some more events kind of during June and actually running into July, a few more. That places are inevitably filling up fast, so do go on and book sooner rather than later if you want to grab a place. I think we do still have a few slots that we're trying to sort of just chase up venues for, so there may well be a few more days appearing in the near future. So do keep checking the list. The list keeps growing kind of as we finally get confirmation, and particularly as we identify anybody willing to host a session for us. Which leads me on to the main sort of, or one of the main parts of today's session, which was really looking at some of the operational changes that are coming. I think the first bullet really states the blindingly obvious, which is that the new functional skills suite will continue to be spread across 5 levels: entry 1, entry 2, entry 3, level 1 and level 2. One thing that will be new, however, just in terms of how we organise functional skills on our systems, we have the obligatory 4-digit City Guilds number, 4748, which I think we've mentioned previously is going to be the new number for functional skills. We're organising our points of registration slightly differently though going forward, and there are a number of reasons for that. It's mostly around actually trying to manage the quality assurance process a little bit more smoothly. But in essence, what we're doing is splitting entry level and level 1 and level 2 into separate points of registration. So anybody familiar with the current structure of our 3748 sort of scheme on a system will know that there is a single point of registration, 374801, which covers all 5 levels of English, and similarly 374802 covers all 5 levels of maths. What we will have in future is 01 covering entry level English, separate number 02 covering level 1, level 2 English, and then 03 covering entry level maths, and finally 04 covering level 1, level 2 maths. Some of the more eagle-eyed among you will have recall that we've been also talking about, we're also planning to move ICT across into 4748. We are still working through the arrangements around how precisely that's going to work. One of the things that we're also starting to factor into those discussions is the announcement last week that came from the DFE about the new basic essential digital skills, and the proposal from 2021 to have a digital functional skills suite of qualifications that would become the de facto replacement for ICT. So we're just obviously in our thinking, obviously wanting to make sure that we future-proof things appropriately, and that we provide either a separate home for those new qualifications, or again bring those into the 4748 family of qualifications. So the key message there really is watch this space for now. In terms of assessments and exams, and you will see, I think we've touched on this in previous sessions, there is a little bit of a change of terminology here, in the sense that we are now starting to talk about the external assessments as level 1 and level 2 as exams, and that's partly I think reflecting a reality, but also reflecting the new regulatory conditions that are going to exist with the new qualifications that do up the ante a little bit in terms of the expectations around how those externally marked components should operate. So you will see us increasingly starting to use the term exam rather than assessment when we refer into the external assessments. Entry level rather, I think we will generally stick with the term assessment, because those will continue to be internally assessed. The entry level, I think, as we all know, will continue to be available on demand. The assessment documents available to download from our website. Level 1, Level 2 will continue to have external assessment available on an on-demand basis with both paper and on-screen methods of delivery, both available obviously year-round. The internal and external quality assurance processes, IQA and EQA processes, will continue to apply for entry level as well as for the speaking, listening and communicating component of English at levels 1 and 2. One other change, and again it's a regulatory change rather than something that's of our doing, but something nevertheless to be aware of, is that in future, certainly within the new reformed qualifications, there will be no spiky profile mechanism within functional skills English. All three components of English will in future need to be achieved at the same level. So in terms of operational changes, in terms of transition, and I think we've touched on some of these dates in previous sessions, but just to obviously reiterate, and again, I think probably worth saying that we are making a few tweaks to these plans, as particularly as kind of we gather kind of more and we consult on them. The absolute given dates and the dates that we've absolutely no room for manoeuvre over are the first and the last dates on this table. So 31st of August 2019 is the absolute cut-off date in terms of us being able to accept any new registrations for the legacy 3748 functional skills suite of qualifications in English and Maths. They will close off on the 31st of August. We won't, unlike with other qualifications, we won't be able to accept any requests for late registration. They will close for anybody not already registered on that date. Similarly, 31st of August 2020 is the absolute cut-off date in terms of us being able to issue any certificates against those qualifications. So that will be the last day on which we're able to operate or issue any live qualification certificates to learners who've completed those qualifications. We then have a sort of space in the middle, which is kind of the period from about the end of April onwards through to the end of July, when we are going to be gradually phasing out the legacy qualifications assessments. What we're proposing at the moment is that we wouldn't anticipate any further internal assessments, any either entry-level assessments, obviously, and in addition, the speaking, listening and communicating at level 1, level 2. We would expect those to all have been completed by the end of April 2020, so 13th of April. Similarly, we're then expecting all external assessments to have been sat by the 31st of May 2020. We've left a couple of blank rows or blank kind of dates in this table, just simply because one of the things we're currently working through is how much latitude we can give in terms of deadlines for ordering those assessments. But I think we're certainly moving to a view that says actually we wouldn't anticipate any assessments being, certainly any external assessments being sat any later than the 31st of May. Similarly, we also don't anticipate any external quality assurance activity relating to the current qualifications happening any later than the 31st of July. And the reason, and on the face of it, it looks like those dates look quite draconian. The reason for it is that because we've got absolutely no give over the 31st of August date, we're building in a little bit of wiggle room to make sure that every result that needs to be claimed has been submitted, every paper that might need marking and then possibly remarking is dealt with, and that there is basically no learners who, for reasons that are not within their control, run the risk of falling short, particularly with English, where one of the things that has also been written into the new regulatory conditions is a requirement that learners won't be able to mix and match any old or new component achievements. So if they've achieved components of the old English, they won't be able to carry those forward into the new qualification. So again, that's another reason for kind of wanting to forewarn you as much as possible about the need to plan for switching over to the new qualifications. Another big change that's coming is really around the actual sort of parameters around the conduct of exams, as we're now starting to call them. It is part of a broader piece around Ofqual expecting greater consistency and rigour across awarding organisations, and that's quite something that they're expecting of all awarding organisations. In particular, one of the things that is particularly exercising them is the security of any paper-delivered assessments, particularly when they're delivered on an on-demand basis. And so there are a couple of things that are very concerned about. One is the idea of teachers or tutors having access to live assessment material and potentially being in a situation where they are involved in actually directly supervising their own learners. So they've kind of quite concerned about that and wanting some reassurance on that, but also around the whole issue of transporting live assessment material and how that's kind of stored and moved around. What's coming out of this is two things. One, we're producing ourselves a new instructions for conducting exams document that's specific to functional skills, aligns much more closely with the JCQ ICE document, the generic document that covers most other types of exam, but nevertheless written with specific reference to functional skills and obviously an appreciation, firstly, the nature of this assessment in terms of it being something that does operate on demand, but also recognising some of the things that have always differentiated it, such as things like allowing taking account of the work-based settings and so forth. One of the things that we do anticipate, however, is it not being possible in future for teachers or tutors of functional skills to be directly involved in invigilating external assessments, or certainly not for the subject areas that they're involved in delivering. We do, however, still anticipate that being okay or acceptable for on-screen assessments. The real concerns are around paper assessments, so it's a need to obviously have particular regard to that when planning assessments. We're obviously still working through finalising some of the detail of this with Ofqual, partly as part of the technical evaluation process, but also because they're very clear that they want to see consistent practice across awarding organisations. So before we absolutely finalise this document and publish it in its finalised form, we're still taking a few more soundings around some of those things. But something I think it was important to forewarn you about is the need to obviously bear in mind that certainly where as far as paper assessments are concerned, there are going to be much sort of tighter parameters around the conduct of those. Which leads on to a kind of broader piece, and this is really kind of setting out the landscape a little bit more. We are, as we do at the moment, going to be having an overarching 4748 handbook that covers the entire suite of functional skills qualifications. What we will also continue to do on top of that is publish a specification document for each subject area. Within that, we're also proposing to split entry level off from level 1 and level 2 to align with the way that we've now organised it on our systems. But the spec documents will do a similar job to the current ones in the sense that they will set out the assessment coverage and weightings for that subject area. So they will set out in full the sort of scope and design of our qualifications. The content of those, as I think we've said on previous occasions, is obviously ultimately derived from the DFE subject content documents that we've referred to. So those subject content statements aren't something that we've just dreamed up. They are kind of transposed directly from that document. We'll have alongside that the ICE document that I was referring to a moment ago. And then thirdly, another document, not in existence yet, but certainly will be there from this autumn, is our a new version of the guidance for delivery documents that we've already have in place for the current English and Maths external assessments. So we're producing a new versions of those to align with the new qualifications. They'll do a similar job to the current ones in the sense that they will provide that kind of chief examiner sort of insight in terms of the actual design, the allocation of marks, what we would see learners commonly losing marks for not doing as well as they could, or gaining marks for doing well, and so that kind of similar piece to what we have at the moment. So that's the operational side of things. Moving on to the delivery side, I think we need to be aware that we have obviously similar set of key documents to previously, in the sense that we will have the specs that relate back to the subject content. I think it is worth saying that one of the things, particularly the event today, it's kind of come out in the big, it's been a major part of the discussion today, is about how much more detail there is in the subject content document compared to the old original 2010 subject criteria that existed. We'll have obviously the other guidance documents. I think there are some obviously big things that are going to obviously need to be borne in mind in terms of your planning for your delivery. The big obvious ones are going to be working without calculators or working without dictionaries and spell checkers, having to do a talk or a presentation at level 1, having to incorporate the spelling tasks at entry level, and also some of the shifting level expectations. And the mapping document that I've referred to previously obviously is there to help a little bit with that. I think worth giving some thought to initial and diagnostic assessment. I think our key message will always be don't throw out everything that you're currently doing. I think another important point that I think I would always make around initial and diagnostic assessment is we tend to fall into the trap of seeing it as a thing or as a tool that you put learners in front of and it gives you the magic answer, rather than being a process and this whole series of professional judgments for which there may well be a number of tools that are there to help you, but ultimately it is about making an informed decision about learners' current capabilities and the support that they need to move forward. There are obviously tools there to help you, including our own e-functional skills tool, which I know have touched upon in previous sessions. And obviously, just to reiterate, we have now got a pretty thorough array of sample assessments for both maths and for English. Instructions for accessing them are on this slide. They are still, for the time being, hosted on our current 3748 functional skills web page. They will at some point be migrated across the 4748 page once we've built that, and they will obviously sit there once we've gone through that process. Which leads me to the end of this session, but what I will just do very quickly before we get on to that is give you a very quick tour of the new openness system. So I will just come out of this, and hopefully if I can just quickly change the desktop, there we go. Hopefully that's now visible. What you will see when you log into the openness system is something a bit like this. So you'll have a take the test symbol. So what we could do, for example, is let's pick maths level 2 and let's just pick a sample paper. I'm logged in at the moment as a learner. What you will have when I enlarge that, hopefully, it takes a moment. I should have queued that up before we started, but anyway, it won't take more than a moment to come up. Here we go. So I had that dreaded moment, is it going to actually appear? But here it is. And again, this is obviously a current level 2 paper, just to obviously set this through. It's a sample paper. I'll hit the start button as I would normally, and you'll see obviously once you're in there, it behaves exactly like the real thing. I won't dwell on the actual content of the paper other than just put some token marks in. £250 I'm saying there, which is wrong obviously, but I'm just doing that just to obviously illustrate this. What I will do now, because I'm bored and I'm a learner with absolutely no staying power, is I'm going to log out of the system. It's going to give me a load of warnings to tell me I haven't answered all the questions, but I'm going to ignore those and I'm going to exit. What it will do now is, what I will now be able to do is go in, hopefully, it won't show just yet, but what will happen is in the next few hours that test will show up in this result here. What I will be able to do as a tutor, wearing a different hat, is go in and then mark those responses and go through the actual, go through the stuff. So you'll be able to sort of see in future how that works. That was obviously a very quick tour. We're doing, as I think I said earlier on, some more detailed video walkthroughs, so you will have a more kind of informed and a slightly more kind of measured walkthrough of how those work. But obviously that's just to give you a very quick flavour and an opportunity to obviously bring that back to life. I'll just go back to the slides. About this. There we go. Right, okay. Just looking to see if any questions coming through. I think the first question, how much does openness cost? And the short answer is absolutely nothing. It's free. So I'll keep saying that. I think I've said that on previous occasions, but I think it's important to say it is, because it is part of the assessment preparation kind of resources that we have. It's a system. If you are a current Evolve user, or if you currently use Evolve to deliver functional skills, you'll have had an email from us today confirming that openness is now open for business. And what that will do is also include some instructions to get it set up and be able to start using it. If you don't currently use Evolve with us, you can just go to the openness pages on the functional skills within the functional skills web pages, and they will also talk you through what you need to do to get set up. It's fairly intuitive, and certainly technically, if you've got anything that currently works with those, that will come through. Just some other questions just to sort of follow up. I think it's worth saying, and important, I should have just pointed that out, is the test version that came up a second ago had a 4-hour time duration on that, and that was really just to, I think it was recognising that it will have different purposes, and that there may well be instances where you may want to run it as a kind of a walkthrough rather than as a live test. So we put a notional 4 hours against the time allowance, just to stop it automatically shutting down after the time allowance. You may well want to, what it will do though is store how long learners have spent on their tests, so you will have that in future. One important point to say, the Evolve system itself is not so clever that it can actually mark learners' responses. If we think about it, the real live tests have to be marked by real human beings, so we couldn't develop an algorithm or a technical way of actually creating the actual amending those at the same time. They will obviously, there will be services for guidance on how to use those. Just looking at some other questions. It is a separate login system from the Secure Assess system, so there is a separate URL for accessing this. If you've had the email from us today, you'll have that. If not, you'll be able to sort of get that from us. Just to change the subject a little bit, I can see a couple of technical questions. One about the approval arrangements for reform functional skills. Firstly, to deal with that, you will have there will be a fast track process. We will be issuing the forms imminently, so that will come certainly to the existing centres. The only reason really, the thing that's holding that up is waiting for the final completion of the technical evaluation process. And there's another, I can see there's another question about that, so I'll come to that in a second. So that's emerging. We will have what we won't have initially is if you are, once you've given approval for the reform functional skills, what you won't do initially is have direct claims status. But what we will do is certainly if you have the type of provision where you need to sort of do this have learners going through sooner, is we'll work closely with you and we'll organise for an EQA monitoring activity to take place as early as possible. So you're not left with a kind of lengthy hiatus before you're able to start submitting results. And particularly, the only reason for not giving you direct claims up front was recognising that this is quite different, and particularly some of the security considerations are a little bit different. So it's checking and really being confident that you'll have those there as well. Some other subjects just coming through, just on the technical evaluation. I think I touched on this earlier on. It is, and I know one of the things that has sort of, I think, not been entirely helpful has been this chart that has sort of shown where awarding organisations are in the process. What that doesn't necessarily tell you is the more qualitative stuff that's happening in the background. We very much approach this from the point of view of this being a journey rather than a race. So it has very much been a process where we have worked with the regulator and it's less about us submitting stuff and just waiting for them to say no to it. We've worked much more closely with them, and that's why. And also, we've taken them, if I'm honest, on a little bit of a journey, particularly around some of the things around exam conduct, where we could have kind of rolled over a little bit more easily to kind of get things through. What we have done, though, is continue to sort of discuss with them things like the need to ensure that there is on-demand availability, the need to ensure that there is flexibility, particularly for on-screen. So that's one of the reasons why we haven't necessarily had final kind of yeses through on all of our qualifications. I think the crucial date that will obviously hold for everybody is the 1st of September, and I think what we can be absolutely certain about is that there will be qualifications in place for that date. Quick question about entry-level maths. That's actually something I know that we haven't published sample papers until quite recently. They have actually gone up in the last day or so, so they are now there as well. Some other questions about feedback. We're not planning to arrange the feedback arrangements at the moment. We're kind of doing that. We will be adding those. We'll be we are reviewing that, particularly for paper. At the moment, the arrangements will stay as they are, but we will be adding in some extra. We're looking at a way of adding some additional features, particularly to the paper. I won't put any actual timescales on that, but they will come through. Another question which I've just seen, which is, we'll have a new qualification code, and that's very much our internal number. Will the qualifications themselves also have new learning aims? And the answer to that is yes, they will, because they are completely new qualifications. Okay, there are other questions. I think we will obviously take any of those away, and we will add to those as well. So there will be more kind of questions coming over the coming months, and we will. I think there's one question about the FAQs themselves. We are going to be publishing a reformed functional skills, a reformed set of functional skills FAQs kind of in the next couple of weeks. So that will incorporate a whole series of questions. Just in the question about learning aims, they won't actually be officially available until the 1st of September, so they won't officially go live until then. We will know the learning aim codes, I would imagine, within the next month or so. So we'll certainly be able to share those once they become available. There'll be the usual slight time lag between those being issued by Ofqual and us actually those appearing on the hub for funding purposes. But we'll certainly know what they are, and obviously we will share those as soon as they are. So I'm flipping from questions. I think that really brings us to the end of this session. So I'll say say thank you again for your attendance. Look forward to seeing you at the events. I'm seeing some questions about obviously how many people, how many places we have at those events. We are unfortunately quite limited, just simply in terms of room capacity, in terms of the rooms. What we have done though is put a waiting list against each of those events. So if there are any places that do crop up, there is the potential to start offering places. And again, as I think I said earlier on, we are still looking to try and add some more dates on as well. So we will have events kind of throughout the country. Just remains to say thank you again, as always, for your attendance. Hopefully this will be useful. You'll get the recording sent to you in the next day or so, so you'll be able to listen back again at your leisure, or indeed any colleagues who haven't been able to join the live session will have the chance to do it again. I think it'll be back to the usual Fun Skills 3 crew next month, so you won't just have one voice to listen to. But we'll obviously next month we'll focus on. I think we were looking at maths as the probably main area of focus for next time, because there will maybe be some more detailed information we can start sharing about the way that that's now shaping up. So we'll have that next month. Open to suggestions as to what we do from thereafter, but we can pick that up during the session next month. So from me, Paul Sini, that's all. I'll say thank you again, and goodbye.